Thank you for listening to the news review. I was going to spend a little extra time trying to pin down some important topics about this story that's not going to go away. First of all, we want to first point out some important facts. When women are in welfare, it puts them in a disadvantage. It puts mothers in a disadvantage. It puts husbands and fathers in a disadvantage. So the underlying problem might be just address human trafficking as poverty itself. And the facts don't lie. The statistics don't lie. And there are mothers, and I include my own mother, who are put in a very helpless situation. And it should never have come to that. Because if a mother or a parent, in this case, single mother, doesn't have to address these concerns, this is not just a white issue, it's a black issue, it's everyone's issue. But the mothers, the single mothers, this is addressing that primarily. When I started to see that the feed and people are starting to talk about it finally, that it had to come to this outrageous story of what's going on in Washington, D.C. to actually get people to notice how serious this issue is. Okay, now, here are some things. We were disarmed, number one. When your family and your parents are disarmed, and we don't know what the other factors are. It could be the lack of help financially. Could be a lot of those things. Those are factors. Poverty is a factor. I just addressed my issue with my mother. She's a mother of 6 children. My father, having his own concerns. Both parents, and I'm just using my parents as an example, were put in situations that would make them more vulnerable, and every parent can understand this. Losing their parental rights, number one. But there were other things that happened before they lost their parental rights. And that addresses some of the concerns regarding foster care and other programs. But I'm going to tell you, when your parents are disarmed, before it even comes to foster care, before the children's services ever get involved, there are other factors. There are family concerns or issues that lead up to that. So we can't just pin down who's at fault and who's what and what's what. But I'm going to just use my family as a primary example. You disarm your parents, especially when they're in the middle of a difficult divorce or separation. And then, a single mother is looking for a way to keep her home together, which is hard to do. It's hard to keep a home together when you're a single mother. So when I look at these issues, and I don't have children, but I'm looking at my situation as an example of what one thing leads to another. And because we're disarmed with the facts, because we don't know the information, because we don't know what's going on in our communities. Look, in Washington, D.C. alone, unless somebody of importance with quote-unquote celebrity status actually brings something like this to the forefront, we probably wouldn't even know about this either. So let's just focus on just what's going on here in Washington, D.C. Who would have known that 500 girls since January were missing? We couldn't have known that. Actually, had it not been for it trending, we probably even know the information that we know right now. So gathering your information and coming from a place of strength, not afraid, unafraid, unapologetic, not arguing with people, agreeing that we got a big issue here. We can't even discuss things. We can't even talk to your neighbor about something like this. This isn't meant for small talk. But there's got to be a way we can bridge that gap from small talk and have a warm-up discussion and warm people up to the fact that these are serious numbers. 500 girls since January, that's unheard of. And what makes it important to us? We're only 4 hours from Washington, D.C. And some of these cases, I read in Johnstown that a little girl, 3-year-old, was that 3 years ago, ended up in Washington, D.C. 3-year-old little girl from Johnstown, PA, which is only a couple hours away from here. And then, of course, the highly public issue of the Jerry Sandusky case. That in itself ate up enough news coverage. And then, it's the ones that have gotten news coverage. I mean, I don't watch the news. I think I would. I don't. But I am studying. So this is why we say share the outrage. It shouldn't have been this outrageous, honestly. It should have never got to this point. But, some of us, we wait till it's too late anyway. And that's a human, I guess that's human nature. But we're trying to overcome this, okay? So why shouldn't we get educated? Why shouldn't we be informed? Well, obviously, looking at some of the cases statewide, just with the teacher sexual abuse cases alone, is a controversial topic because some of it's an age difference of a couple years. That's still not the issue here. When you have authority, people in a position of authority, they go to school, they educate themselves. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I would like to know that somebody's mature enough to separate themselves from being the adult and the child. And listen, there could be other things, factors. I'm not questioning that. I can't take one case over another. Overall, there is an expectation that our teachers are in a position of authority, and they understand that you don't go through the Act 33, Act 34. You don't go through all these background clearances just to, to get over on that. I mean, it's meant that you're given that trust. That's called public trust. So I can't divide up this issue. I mean, you don't go to college and go to school unless somebody's training you to say do something otherwise. But I mean, that's the whole point of doing background checks. That's the whole point of getting into the position of teachers. There are teachers right now that want to move up the ranks and go to college. They do everything right, and they have to be around other teachers that are doing this. And that's an internal issue then. And then there's an internal issue going on in our police departments where you're hearing about some police officers, they're trying to do their job. And then you have some police officers, they're doing some shady things. And we're looking at an example of Hubbard, Ohio, where the mayor now is not just reprimanded, but the two officers involved in this case were charged with indecent assault and sexual abuse of a minor. And these youth programs, they were invited to go to these youth programs to help teach them how to be possibly future law enforcement. Two officers are now charged with this. So it's obviously there's an internal issue. And then I'm hearing about another case, and we're going to just keep talking about the cases that haven't even got any public attention. Like the one case right now in Westmoreland County. Somebody knows somebody that knows somebody. And the woman was put in a involuntary commitment because her ex-husband is raping her son every weekend. They're throwing her in a mental hospital right now, or have been, because they want to shut her up. And you guys know, when people want to shut somebody up, that's the way to do it. If you want to shut somebody up, put them in a mental ward and call them crazy. Call them mental. And the obvious thing is that that's one of their greatest weapons to shut people up. Because then if you label them as crazy and mental, well, then you know how the media looks at that. They're the ones that spin it that everyone's mental if you don't agree with this or that. I mean, they have all kinds of definitions. I mean, you could open up the DSM right now, and they'll have a definition for everything right now. Not to say that there aren't concerns. Don't argue. I'm not arguing, but there's an abuse of that system in itself that can be argued. And we could argue that case because we actually have the numbers. We actually have the truth on our side. We really do. And I'm saddened that people got to the point where they had to betray a lot of people to get their way by using the mental health system to abuse it. So everything's been used and abused. Policies, laws, just the overuse and abuse of PFAs, like in some cases where there might not even be a real case of abuse and somebody can actually get a PFA. And the judge isn't going to say no to that. But what if that woman or man are lying? I mean, that's the problem that the county runs into. So you don't even know who's who and what's what. So, and then the real cases where there's actual evidence of sexual abuse, rape, the DA's just clogged up. They can't take that case. They can't take the case. And I have unfortunately legal proof of that too. I have proof of this, and unfortunately, it's not meant to use as a form of control or manipulate the information. The information speaks for itself. The sex crimes kits speak for itself. The crimes itself speak for itself. Either the county and the caseworkers are overwhelmed, and then they just pile up, like in the case of Ohio, where these sex crimes kits just pile up. That's insane. That's a definition of insanity, because something's not working at the local level and community level, and we know the process. If you want to file a civil suit, you have to win the criminal case possibly, even to go and address a civil matter. Because victims' compensation, if you know anything about that, the compensation's just not there. They cut those programs too in the state. And I know that I spoke to the representatives in the House, in Pennsylvania House, who are talking about how police officers will go to an actual situation with domestic violence, and then we saw what happened with Officer Scott Bascom in Washington County. And these cases could be flagged. There could be a database where you have a chronic problem of domestic violence calls just in this area alone. And back to the DC case. If you know that maybe these kids are walking to school by themselves, why not ask why these kids aren't on group dates and grouping together? And never should these kids be walking by themselves. Not with this epidemic. That's where we've got that far, right? And then there's other theories out there, and I'm not saying they're true or not, but these are other theories, okay, that there is a darker thing going on behind the scenes. We've heard plenty of cases, like in the case of Indiana right now with the 2 girls. This guy was in hunting gear, and the girls were dead, but before they died, they took pictures and images of that man. He was in hunting gear, as if he was hunting for prey. It's like food for a monster. And if there isn't a definition for monster, then explain to me. This guy was literally in hunting gear, like he was hunting 2 little girls. That's insanity. Even the animals care for their young. It used to be the man was the protector, hunted and gatherers, that whole basic caveman mentality, Neanderthals. I don't know what we're dealing with. I don't know that anyone with the capacity of compassion and humanity can understand somebody has that reptilian brain, Neanderthals, and it's for real. I'm not just saying it. These aren't just cheap words. I think there is a difference. Some people are just not. They're not. It's not that they're not right in the head completely, because we got that far. I'd go as far as that they're literally hunting these children. And I'd never seen the movie Hunger Games. I get a pretty good idea what's going on here. They starve them and isolate them, and then done. I'm just looking at it from this vantage point, because I'm looking at a predator, and I'm thinking the best example is the one in Indiana, at least most recently, and I'm not even touching some of the other cases. In the case of Ted Bundy, he was one of the most charming people, but he actually cleaned out his VW buggy because it was a torture chamber. But you would never have known if you had known that how nice and polite he was. Okay, this is not a crack that you can't be nice and polite either, because manners do matter. Let's get that. Let's be able to divide this issue up. You're talking about sociopaths and psychopaths, and what kind of person would be arguing with a victim, a mother, and then putting her in a psych ward with psychopaths after what she's gone through? Because the only explanation for that, and I'm sure every judge out there or any officer ever heard of, what in the world are they doing, putting the victim's mother in isolation among sociopaths of all things, after what her little boy's going through? Her little boy described a man's penis and white stuff coming out of it. 5-year-old little boys don't know what that is. I mean, according to the way I see it, and according to most women and young men and men, how would a little 5-year-old, 4-year-old little kid be able to explain that? Unless something was viewed to them. In the case of Newcastle last year, met a young girl from the West Coast. She was gang raped several times, on and on. Her mother held her down. They kept raping her and raping her. And I'm going to tell you that this is how serious this is. And of course, the bigger issue of the wealthy, the money behind child pornography. I mean, when you're seeing kids taped down, and somebody, it's like they can't comprehend it. A kid taped down, that's called bondage. I didn't even know what that word was. That's called S&M. I mean, we were just talking about the topic. The owner of the pizza shop down in Washington D.C. He's wearing black leather. That is a good indicator. He's into something weird, because I don't know anybody that wears those clothes. And is it kid-friendly restaurant? Are you kidding me? Come on. You know, some of us work in restaurants, and I know the difference between kid-friendly. We actually have a children's menu, and they have like burgers, fries, things like that, grilled cheese. They select off a kid's menu, but I don't know any of the servers. Haven't gone to any local restaurants here, Eaton Park, some of the restaurants. They're not wearing black leather with whips and chains. Okay, come on. This is the kind of sick stuff that they're telling you. You're going to convince me that you're a child-friendly, family-friendly restaurant. I don't know what kind of family you're serving to, but the average family restaurant has to obey laws and rules according to the state and local zoning laws. Kid-friendly. I mean, like as if you were born yesterday. I'm sorry to say this, but it's arguably one of the most difficult topics to cover, but it's pretty obvious to us that, you know, if you're going into an area where you know there's like strip clubs and stuff, like it's a known fact that a lot of girls, because they don't have money and they're single parents, it goes back to what we originally were talking about, that they're going to probably, you know, go to that strip club. I mean, because there's money to be made. You know, and I used to say, well, you know, you're over 18, you can decide for yourself, but you better get the facts first before you decide. Because I wouldn't be inviting my friends out for a night, just for amateur night. And I'd like to know, I'd ask the question, what kind of friends do you have if they don't care about you enough to say, hey, listen, educate you. Now, of course, young girls make decisions, you know what I mean? But at least have the education, have the facts behind you. At least know what you're walking into if you're going down to Club Erotica, or if you're going down to the strip club down there. I don't know what name it is. They've had so many names, so many fronts, so many of this, some of this, that. I mean, it's a well-known fact. I'm not talking about things that people don't already know. It's not for everyone to try to figure out for themselves. But if you were curious, you know, that's what word of mouth is for. And as far as ratting people out, listen, I know a lot of people say, oh, you're going to rat people out. It's not about ratting people out. It's about knowing what's out there. At least have an idea what you're getting yourself into. If you live in an area where there's a lot of strip clubs and, you know, adult stores, I would hope that there would be more separation between the nearest school district, nearest education centers, and a lot of them do obey the laws. But the ones down there, and I mean, down closer to the city, you're going to see it's a lot more, you know, it's a lot more run down in those areas. So why is that? Why is it that the strip club is only like in walking distance from the nearest housing projects? I'd like to know. I mean, because there's kids that live there too. This is not to say that there aren't people that, you know, have their, quote, adult entertainment. But even I think people with an adult entertainment are going to ask the same questions. I mean, if you're an adult entertainer, wouldn't you be wanting to know this? Wouldn't you want to ask the facts? Wouldn't you want to know what's going on in your community? Wouldn't you want to talk to the people at the tanning salon? I mean, you can't have small talk about this. This is too big of an issue. It takes too much time. That's why we're taking the time to do this. You know, I don't know how anybody can feel comfortable with all the information out there and just freely go about your life like it's not really, you can't think about it. No, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's when you get in your truck and you're driving down the street or you're going back and forth to work, you may not see the obvious. I mean, sometimes it's just hidden in plain sight. We know that. But I don't have to go out every night to recognize that probably isn't out there. We might not even see it. But doesn't mean that, you know, we're passé or passive about it. In fact, probably you've got more information right now about what's going on in just our community alone. And it goes back to the single mom. The single mom is just trying to keep her house together. And if she has to go... And the hip-hop music, let's just address that real quickly. I don't know. But if you were listening to your hip-hop music and you're asking why they call hoes and bitches, they've created a climate that women have been reduced to hoes and bitches. So it's no wonder but these kids, their lives are undervalued, underappreciated, and now you got an epidemic. So some of this blame is shared, okay? Some of us can share responsibility on what's going on a community level. And as individuals, I'm just going to shut off that TV because that's simple. It's just that simple. I'm not going to take the risk. I mean, TV program is what they call it. They call it that, because people are realizing that I'm not even sure what's on TV that is appropriate. You don't know if there's some secret subliminal message underlying issue. So looking at what's going on in Virginia, 34 children in 72 hours alone. So while we're not saying you have to boycott everything on Facebook with a hashtag, and we don't mean to say you have to blow up every notification, but I would say this. You have to make a decision when you're turning that knob in your music, and you have to decide, is this really leading somewhere else? Because I don't think anyone really thought, like, hey, listen to that, hip-hop and rap that's talking about hoes and bitches. I could ask a couple questions. I mean, hey, if that's all women are reduced to is hoe and bitches, and they get smacked around, then that's no wonder we got a story like that has just blown up. And I mean, when I say blow up, you could blow up your notifications. Go down to the strip clubs and find out what's up. It's not just about sex, okay? Let's get that. I mean, we realize adults have consenting relationships. So, you know what I mean? It's not that issue. I mean, although there could be, because you don't know if that girl's hooking up with a pedophile. She might have kids at home. I mean, these are obvious things this is common sense, what's going on out there. I don't know, just getting the facts together matter. Knowing who you're hooking up with, yeah, you should ask the questions if you have kids especially. I guess the culture itself has to consider, I mean, what are your choices? If you turn to a church that doesn't have the information, it's not going to help either. Because there's a lot of churches that aren't informed. I'm just going to lay it out like it is. And there are not enough women homeless shelters for everybody to run to. It's the truth. That's why it has to become a community issue. Because everyone talks about this, okay? Now it's got to the point that it's gotten so much cover, and we're blowing up our social pages because finally we're recognizing maybe there's an issue here. And this is not meant to demonize anybody because you got a talented voice. But there is a message in the rap, hard hip-hop music that has been sent. And then there's the Christian rap, which I love, that sends a different type of message. I mean, it's about choices, because if I was going to sit here and just say that it was the music alone, but it's obvious that sends a different message. So send the right message. I guess consider your choices. Thank you for listening.